If you're looking at an earlier stage company, and there's some really cool ones and I love them all, check out how many employees they have. And that's a big tell of where you want to send your data.
What's shaking? Welcome back to All In. Today is Cyber Edition. And hey, share this out with at least 3 people. That's how we grow. We don't advertise, we don't take sponsors, none of that, because this has become such an amazingly successful show because of you, and we still need your help. Share this out with at least 3 people today, because you're going to want to anyways, because my guest is a born entrepreneur, always looking for ways to make things work better, and just an amazing history in the network security field, in protecting people's privacy, intrusion prevention, all of this amazing stuff, and founded this awesome company called Priva, Privva. Ishan Girdhar, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate you having me today. And I'm going to do a plug. Send it to 5 people. 3 is not enough. So we got to grow it a little bit faster than that.
That sounds awesome, brother. I appreciate that. And we're going to give some people some really awesome knowledge today, because we've got security professionals, we have managed service providers that listen to the show, general entrepreneurs, and then also consumers, the public. It's kind of a wide range. But today we're going to gear it towards, of course, cybersecurity. And you've been in this field a while, right? How long?
Yeah, coming a little over 5 years now.
Fantastic. It's really cool because you say 5 years and a lot of people will be like, oh, that's not that long to be in a field. Well, when did cyber take off, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's still pretty nascent. I mean, I always say to people, the iPhone's still only 15 years old. It's still pretty early in its infancy, and cyber, albeit it's been around for a while, people didn't really care till about 5 to 7 years ago. And, that's evident. There's not enough people to fill the jobs that we need right now.
For sure, my man. Tell me a little bit about Priva. What does it do?
Yeah, so we help companies evaluate the risk of using vendors. So think supply chain risk management. That's obviously becoming a huge problem today. A lot of companies have access to more and more data, whether it's business, enterprise data, or consumer data. And so at the end of the day, you're giving your information to a company, and then they're sending it to probably anywhere from 10 to thousands of other companies. And so if we're not doing the right checks and balances downstream, and if any one of those downstream companies gets hacked, at the end of the day, your data is going to get exposed. So we built a workflow tool just to make that whole process easier, scalable, just trying to make the UI simple. I'm not that smart, so I tell the team if I can't figure it out, then nobody can. And so they made it really dummy friendly for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's the way it's supposed to be, right?
Unfortunately, it's not that easy. But that's why I hired well and partnered really great with a great CTO.
That's what's important too, because there's a lot. I come from this industry. I have an engineering background. I was a Microsoft certified system engineer back in the day. So I was the one that was in server closets, crawling under the desks. Doing everything. Launching. My biggest rollout was something like 15,000 servers, right, and over 100,000 workstations for Merrill Lynch. And still today, I'm like, I just want stuff to work. That's all that it is. I don't get off on actually doing the tech work itself. Yeah. I get off on the outcome that it provides. So, and it sounds like you're in a similar position too, to where you're like, listen, we just need to achieve something here, and tech's going to get us there, but it's really the achievement of this outcome is what's going to thrill us.
Yeah. No, a funny story about that is being a second-time entrepreneur. I used to tell my CTO, just turn the button yellow. Okay. And I was just expected to be done overnight. And he then politely explained to me that there's a lot of nuances in the back end of code, and turning that button yellow impacts 20 other buttons on the software. And I think I've evolved a lot, and it's not easy. And the end of the day, we're here because of him, and I just get to be the ugly face in the front end of it.
The ugly face, that's great. Dude, you were talking about supply chain risk management, right? Things have been just insane over the past year and a half, especially with supply chain. And there's issues that I've seen, of course, with being able to find product quickly, and then I don't know what types of industries you typically work with when you do the supply chain management.
So our two biggest markets are the legal industry and financial services. Legal industry, because your lawyer is your most critical third-party vendor. You probably tell them everything, anything, and share everything. So they're a big vulnerability that kind of go underlooked. And then financial services just being driven by the regulators. They have access to the keys to your kingdom and your money. And so there's obviously a lot of pressure on them. And they're always trying to stay one step ahead of the curve. And that's using better products to make their business more efficient. Yeah. So those are the two markets that we really focus on.
What's the point in it? Because obviously I deal both with attorneys and financial services industry. So I'm sure everybody listening does in some fashion or another. What's a point to where your ears should perk up a little bit, kind of like a warning sign that something's not right?
In the financial services, I'll say for the most part, they've done a pretty good job. If you're thinking and you log in and you see somebody else's bank account information when you log into your account, there's a red flag. And trust me, that happens more than you
I've had it happen to me, man. Yeah, freaked me out.
So pretty much everything you can think of when you're looking at your banking, there's somebody else that has that data. So generally try to think about working with companies that are more mature, especially in the fintech space. There's a lot of cool technologies that are coming out around helping consumers manage their money, invest their money, find out how old they are, take a look at their privacy policies, just do a little digging on their website, see if they have a security officer on their team. Those are the sort of things you want to just check. If you go to LinkedIn and you see that they only have 4 employees, your data's probably not very safe. I can tell you that for sure.
They're running everything in a spreadsheet, right?
Yeah. And so, those are the kind of red flags you want to just check out. But if you're looking at an earlier stage company, and there's some really cool ones, and I love them all, check how many employees they have. And that's a big tell of where you want to send your data.
Yeah, for sure. Law firms are similar in that too, because it's they get into a lot of things, especially if they're dealing with healthcare records or anything really, right? There's chain of custody that's involved in that can be broken extremely easily, and violate HIPAA or anything else that has to apply to them. So give me an example of so you work with those two industries, but are you protecting individuals from those two industries, or are you working a lot with those two industries to bring them up to a certain level of compliance?
Yeah, we're bringing those firms, and those are just the two bigger markets. But we also work with school districts, actually.
Oh yeah.
So that's actually another market that we like. Healthcare, technology companies like MindBody, which many people probably use their software to schedule a fitness class or a yoga class. We're helping those companies make sure that their vendors have the right security in place to protect that information. So if you're giving your data to a bank, you're asking and looking at how many employees the bank has. What we're helping those banks do is look at how many employees and what security all those vendors have. So they're doing that ultimately what your fourth party, all those other companies that have access to your information, we're helping them figure that out and basically normalize it. So we send out a survey, a security assessment questionnaire, and it can be as short as 50 questions, and some of my clients ask 800 questions. It's that exhaustive, and ultimately they come back with a single risk score, and they can say, all right, we use 100 vendors in our system that have access to personally identifiable information, and this is the ranking, and they'll put them from 1 to 100, and it's kind of that old cliche, the bottom 10%, start thinking about a new supplier because that's a risk. And so that's what we're doing. And it's a thankless job for the banks and the lawyers and the law firms. And so our job is try to just make it easier for them.
It's necessary though, and I commend them. Oh my gosh, because if I look, because in the cyber, I serve SME, right, which is typically sub $100 million companies, and it's an educational barrier that I've seen, because it's never really like, if there's a breach that occurs, which my crew is amazing and that doesn't happen often at all. And I say not often, because no matter what and however much you can protect any organization, there's still going to be a breach of some sort at some point. There's no way to completely put this shield that's around everything and just wave a magic wand and have everything be okay forever. It doesn't happen that way in our industry, and I'm sure that's the case, because even when you're evaluating supply chain, that bottom 10% you're talking about, that's probably a shifting target, right? If they have 100 vendors, right?
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And you're completely right. Breaches are happening. Every company's probably experienced a breach. If they haven't, they just don't know it yet. And, and it's only getting worse. I mean, how do we combat nation states that are just funded to try to disrupt operations here? And there's not enough people. And I go into every meeting, and my old dad joke is I've never met a security or risk team that has extra time on their hands. And so they don't have enough bodies that know this. And kind of going back to that first question, I've only been in for 5 years. I had no background. I was in investment banking before I started this company. And so learn fast and, it's be smart with your information, and pick companies that you trust. For
sure. And as you're talking about this too, because you're honing in, and you haven't directly said it yet, but I love what you're pointing towards, is that it's really the responsibility of that entity to make sure that you're protecting the PII data that you have under your protection, under your umbrella, because there is another shifting of responsibility. Right. And let's just take it from the consumer perspective. I've seen this, like with Equifax and Marriott, so two of the biggest breaches we know. All of a sudden it became, it's their fault. And that's something I've noticed that exists in the cyber field, is that, okay, we were breached, but how did that happen? Or some data that was within our purview was breached by somebody we're connected with. It's got to be their problem. Right. But that, if you want to call that supply chain, they're a vendor. If we look at it from that perspective, the organization itself, where that breach originated, never really took responsibility to evaluate their vendors in the first place, to make sure that those communications are solid, that the protection exists bidirectionally. I'm sure you come across this all the time.
Yeah, and that's the biggest challenge in our world. You can only go so far as also, right? So pick on Marriott. Even if they did some level of diligence, they only have so much authority to enforce change and act as that sort of dictator to say, you don't have a third-party penetration test, you must do one, and you have to have it done by PwC. You Marriott you have to pick and choose your battles, and they did some diligence, they probably accepted some risks, but it's not foolproof, and that's the hard part.
That is the hard part, and I like how you said they probably accepted some risk, because isn't there always, even with everything that you do, because Priva sounds, dude, just amazing, and I commend you for everything you've accomplished. Even when you talk about that bottom 10%, it's like there's still, let's take that above 90%, right? Because there's varying scores. You're still almost forced to accept some risk somewhere in order to continue doing business, right?
There's absolutely, and it's actually funny. We actually tell our clients, if somebody ends up with 100%, that means they're failing, because they're lying. Because nobody has everything in every aspect of security. And if they get 100%, we actually test them a little bit more and actually ask them to prove it to us. You're gonna have to accept risks, and otherwise you're never gonna have a vendor. I mean, the biggest and best companies in the world.
For sure. You're running solo if you don't accept risk.
I don't know what Salesforce's security budget. I mean, Bank of America or JP Morgan, one of the two, just came out, so they spend $1 billion a year on cybersecurity. Both of them have had security incidents. It doesn't matter how much you throw, how much money you throw at the wall, and you hire the best people. it's going to be challenging. And kind of bring it back to you probably seeing this. I think hackers are now saying, well, let's go after the SMBs a little bit more.
For sure.
They don't have $1 billion, so they're probably easier. And if I go and hack 10 vendors of Bank of America, it's probably faster, easier, and cheaper. And I'll probably get more information than if I actually went after Bank of America and just spent years trying to twiddle my thumbs breaking into their system. So, they're smart. They're going after the smaller, the SMBs too. I mean, I'm assuming you're seeing that as well.
You were dead on. And again, from the educational space in this field too, that's always one of the challenges. And one of the myths that exists too is that, I'm too small for a hacker to pay attention to me. It's like, no, you are within their sweet spot because you communicate with these large vendors that exist, like you're talking a Bank of America, a JP Morgan, because you communicate and transmit data with those entities, you're the easier target. Because you don't have the $1 billion to spend on this, so you have to accept more risk. And that's a gap, from a philosophical perspective, that's a gap that I hope continues to close over the next 5 years. And I see it there because the protection that's really needed that those large entities use, from both human resources and technology, it's really, really expensive to get the stuff you absolutely need right now. But at some point in time, it's going to trickle down like a lot of things do. And hopefully that gap closes to where it becomes more affordable for SMEs just because it's needed. There's no difference in the need between the two. There's just a difference in the amount of money that can be spent.
Yeah. And that's why I like what you're doing, because they don't have the expertise. They don't have the knowledge. They don't have the budget. They don't know the difference between Cylance and CrowdStrike. I mean, I barely know it, and I've been doing this for 5 years. And so, they need somebody to come in and show them a roadmap and try to figure out how to make this affordable. And the key is don't do it as a checkbox exercise. And that's what we still see a lot, that people are saying, well, I got to pass their audit. Don't think about it as passing their audit, thinking about protecting, the consumer's data that's going to go into your system and the impact on your company, their lives, if something does happen.
Wow, that's an interesting perspective, because you're right. I didn't think about it from that. It's almost these audits are almost treated as like a credit check, to where they have to fill out a personal financial statement or something like that. Well, I've got to go through this to maintain business with these people, and that's the only reason why they do it. Versus, from a financial, it's like, let's make sure our finances are sound, but also let's make sure our cyber is sound. But that's interesting, man. It's like, okay, here's just my busy work checking off these boxes right now.
Yes, I do have endpoint protection. Yes, I watched a video about cybersecurity, so now I'm trained. We're still seeing that, and it's evolving. Like you said, it's still an immature. It's a growing market. Most people don't understand it. We're seeing this in the Department of Defense. They're coming out with something called the cybersecurity maturity model, and
you got it.
The CMMC is what it's called. You have 350,000 defense contractors that support the Department of Defense. 80% of them are small to medium-sized businesses that have never thought about this. And now all of a sudden you got the DoD putting down a hammer. And I've read those controls and requirements. They're confusing to me.
They are.
And I live this. I can't imagine the mom and pop shop that's making widgets that are going to Boeing that now have to follow 117 security controls. Come on, that's not feasible. And that's where experts like you come in. All right, let's do an assessment. Let's figure out where you are. But don't just write a check and say, okay, now I passed the DoD, I'm good. And that's,
for sure.
That's what we focus on.
It would help if the DoD actually talked to CISO or the CIA or the NSA, and they all communicated back and forth fairly frequently in a productive fashion.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say on my soapbox today. But
I don't know if you saw the news, but the person at the DoD who was responsible for putting this whole program in place just got put on administrative leave.
Yep.
because she didn't exactly have a security background and she was, breaching her security clearance. So, so the person writing and running this program wasn't even properly educated on what it was. So.
Yay, administration. Anyways.
So we'll get away from politics.
Yeah. Good touch points. Good touch points. Yes. One thing you said that was curious to me, because you were in investment banking before, right? I like how you said you're a second-time entrepreneur right now, but how did you make that transition? Because that's I can see you're helping financial institutions right now, but what made you think, I'm going to jump into security?
So my first venture, which didn't work out, I was selling.
Hey, congratulations. You got some scars. Now you're going to rock it.
I don't know about scars. I got gray hairs and a bald spot, but I was actually selling software to hospitals, and I was a vendor, and I had to go through a security review because I was actually going to connect to their network. And sometimes it was a phone call. Sometimes it was an email. Sometimes it was an Excel sheet. And that was my first foray into this. And I didn't really think too much about it. And then my business partners, they sold their company. And then they started selling to the enterprise, and they were in school districts. And all of a sudden they started getting these security assessment questionnaires. And 5 years ago, they got one from PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and it was an Excel sheet. And it was that moment that we said the number one consulting company in the world still uses a manual process.
It's a big WTF moment right there.
It was so we basically said, let's go give this a shot. We looked at the market, saw a couple people were dabbing in it.
Yeah.
And I remember that moment. I walked into my boss's office and said, hey, I got this opportunity. I had a really good relationship with him. I said, I got this opportunity. I really want to try it. I don't want to do it with your blessing. And he says, all right, what's the deal? I said, look, I want to do some meetings. I want to try some client pitches. I'm going to take a day off here and there. I said, so that's option one. I do it with your blessing. And he says, all right, what's option two? I said, I quit. He said, you got 60 days to figure it out. And I got a school district in New Jersey interested, selling a PowerPoint presentation. And that was how we, I had no clue what I was talking about. They literally
I was just going to ask, man, what did that pitch look like? Your first one.
It was the dumb leading the dumb. So, but it prevailed, and so we got some interest, and I quit my job and dove in, and it's been a fun 5 years.
That's awesome. Yeah. Where do you see the competitive landscape right now? Are there still just a few that are dabbling in this? Because I know it's not very prolific right now.
It's getting worse every day.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, this is, SolarWinds, Microsoft, all these breaches. That are being, these are front page headline breaches that are coming up. And so, the market's definitely evolved, which isn't a bad thing. It's taken a lot of the education part of it out during the sales process. And so we embrace it, but it's definitely getting more and more competitive. And I think that you're seeing more companies understand that this is a risk. And so how do they sort of bring this and complement an endpoint protection and network security product that they may have, and sort of bring it all together. And so, I mean, look, cyber's just getting more and more competitive because people see a greenfield opportunity, and nobody in any aspect of cybersecurity has sort of risen to the top and is truly the best in breed like you have in other industries, because none of these companies really existed 10 years ago. Yep,
you got it. It's still an open market. I mean, the blue ocean mentality that you hear about, I'm excited to see where it's going to go over the next 10 years and looking to play a big part in that role along with you too. It's going to get more competitive, but I also think there's going to be a weeding out over the next several years too, because there's a lot of individuals, like I'm in the SMB space, right? And, I'm looking to make a dominating brand in the SMB space. I mean, no joke. That's the reason why we're going public. For you're looking to do supply chain risk management, but I doubt you're in that to be like number 7 or 8 on the list, right? With the passion that you have. But there's going to be some weeding out over the next couple of years in this industry, to where a lot of those who dabbled and realized that, oh, there's a lot to this, are just going to kind of fall to the wayside. And that's also an opportunity for mergers and acquisitions too, for consolidation is what I see, because there's just like what you're doing right now is not something that Reach Out does. Because there's so many different competencies that exist in cybersecurity that it's mind-boggling, and you can never possibly have them under the same roof.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think you're right. And I think that's actually one of the challenges that we see is there's a lot of buyer fatigue.
Oh, yeah.
Because everybody's opportunistic, present company included.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Look, I'm not gonna hide that.
We're not non-for-profit businesses.
But you're getting these CISOs who are getting calls kind of talking about like our competition.
Yeah.
There's more players calling them, and these CISOs are trying to figure out who's actually a real company, who's started and has 3 people in a garage. That just created a cool front end. Does the product actually work? Is it defensible? We've seen the number of proof of concepts that we've had to do to win deals go up about 1,000% in 2021. Just because people need to make sure, that old cliche, you don't get fired for hiring the big 4, but you could lose your shirt if you hire the wrong cybersecurity vendor and their technology sucks and you've suffered a breach.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be the challenge, I think, is weeding out. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. You're going to see a lot of consolidation, a lot of M&A of products that got contracts but didn't have good technology, and companies who have the good technology just to say, look, we just want to absorb your clients. And you're going to see a lot of consolidation, and then you're going to see a lot of companies fade out because you just don't know who's good. And it's hard to sell to CISOs and directors of securities and CIOs, especially coming after COVID.
It's to your point of the proof of concept. That's probably going to be one of our biggest challenges, yours and mine, over the coming 3 years or so. Is just we're going to come across CISOs. Or in the SMB space, we're going to come across CFOs, for the most part, that have been burned hardcore. Just because they've hired to what you're saying, the 3 guys in a garage.
Yeah, no, and you're going to see a lot, and you're going to see a lot of burnout of CISOs also. I mean, you're seeing it. It's a tough gig.
Mountain Dew doesn't cut it anymore, man. Like what we grew up on, right?
No, and Red Bull's not strong enough. So
exactly.
I mean, they're getting woken up at crazy hours in the middle of the night. I mean, the DLA Piper, which is one of the top law firms in the world. I mean, I know the CISO of that company at the time lived in San Diego, and that attack started in the Ukraine. And so you think about that time difference. I think he got woken up at like 4:30 in the morning to every system of the top law firm in the world shut down and trying to react instantaneous.
I hear you. One of my clients is the largest snow removal company in the Midwest. And it was maybe 5 years ago that this was back when I was still on the keyboard and doing things, right? When I knew how to do it, I should say. Now I've got smarter people like you have your CTO. I got mine too, man. But I remember this was 2014, 2015, something like that. I was up, thank God, that was nice, but I was already like 7 or 8 drinks in because it was New Year's Eve and it was 1 a.m. in the morning now because they have about 14 international patents and there was an active attack coming from China on them. And it was the nightmare of that was just disgusting, especially when you're not expecting it like that, Yeah. So, 6 years ago, being a CISO in that realm, and that's really... Things then are probably maybe like 1% or 0.1% how bad they are now. Yeah. And that sucked. Imagine doing that, right? As a CISO every single week. It's just disgusting.
It is. And so the biggest question, did the client know you were 7 drinks in?
No, client didn't. No, no. I don't know if it made me better or worse. I'm just going to say that it made me better, because it only took about 45 minutes, which actually, that's not bad at all, to stop the breach. That's pretty amazing, especially if I'm like, pour me another, we're just going to go to town with this. But
you're like you're at the corner of the party, like handling business. Like,
yes.
Man, Rick really loves work.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm looking at IP trace routes and seeing this bounce literally all over the world in the midst of this thing. Like, God, where are we going to find these idiots? No,
man, that's wild. Yeah, and they're smart. They know.
Yeah.
The time that everybody's having a cocktail.
You got it. That was exactly it, for sure. Yeah, that was the best time. And this was a company that does maybe about $40 million a year in revenue. Which is a prime target for anyone that's over, even for a nation state, and now it's not, it emanated from China, but what you're saying with the nation states, and this is what I think a lot in our industry don't understand, that a lot of it funnels back to that. So even e-crime groups, because if you look at the threat actor profiles, the 5 main ones, right? The nation states have the motivation for geopolitical destabilization, but they will fund e-criminal groups in order to carry out these attacks, and they carry out attacks not just against SMBs or against these large corporations like JP Morgan or Bank of America, as you're saying. They're attacking you and me too, because they know that we have access. We're one of those vendors that you're talking about. That we have the keys to the kingdom for a lot of these companies too.
Right. Yeah. No, they're fishing. And they have enough money to fish all day and just find that vulnerability. And it's what's tough about it. But hey, job security, I guess.
That's the truth, man. That is
unless we're one of those that didn't make it and we get, sort of.
For sure. Well, I don't intend to be that, and I don't think you're going to be that either.
No.
Oh, this is great, my man. So where do you go from here? I mean, I've thrown out a lot of future predictions. What do you see, for the future of Priva and the future of supply chain risk management over the next 3 years or so?
I think, just take the second part first. I just think it's a growing market. It's price pressure, business efficiency. People don't want to work anymore from now that we're seeing you just got to hire products that are going to make your life easier and do things cheaper. I mean, the legal industry, everybody on here has probably paid a lawyer a lot of money for an hour of work. That's not going to fly anymore. And they need to embrace technology. And so, it's just going to get worse and worse, and expand. So that's where we're seeing it. There's cool companies. We do what we do. Then we work with somebody, a company called Risk Recon. They got acquired by MasterCard. They're doing really cool things and looking at, public information and saying, hey, can we quantify this from a risk? And that, so you bring these couple products that are just going to help scale these. So that, I think supply chain is just going to get worse, better for us, I guess. And then for Priva, you just got heads down. And, we just want to always try to figure out the problem our clients are dealing with. How can we fix it? Like I said, security people are in a thankless job. It's like technology. You expect the computer to turn on, and when it does, nobody thinks about you. But when it doesn't, they lose it and they want your head on a platter. And that's what security is. It's, we didn't get breached. So are you really valuable to the company?
Yeah.
They let go of that person, and all of a sudden they have an incident and they realize the value, and they don't realize they're getting calls at 12 o'clock on New Year's Eve and having to deal with stuff. So, we just want to be heads down. And I say to the team, I used to work at Disney. We customer support to a fault. My team probably hates it. And I take that back. The team does hate it. But if we make our clients' life easier, then we won. And they're going to stick around. And at the end of the day, there are going to be competitors that are going to come in, but we don't really worry about that.
That's awesome, my man. I'm excited to see where you go, where this industry goes too. And let's just keep educating people. I think that's probably our biggest hurdle that we have right now.
Yeah, the general consumer just reads about it, but they don't truly understand. And if you do get breached, I'll say this: if you do get breached and you're using the right companies, don't get mad at them. They didn't do it on purpose, So there may have been some ignorance, there may have been some negligence a little bit, but we're working as hard. The industry's working hard. And they're trying to do the best they can. And so it happens. It's happened probably to everybody. Just have a little compassion for them.
For sure. And celebrate the wins with them too.
Yeah.
Because that was the thing. After we stopped China, in this incident that I was referencing a couple years ago, I took my client out to lunch during that week, just to high fives, but it should also be the other way around, I feel too, show the appreciation, because all of those individuals are going to work so much harder for you. If you have an in-house CISO, whatever, the stuff that you don't see that's going on with those individuals is just insane. Yeah, man. But
So if there's any business owners on here and you have a security team, I agree. Say thanks. It means the world.
For sure. Awesome. Well, if you don't know Ishan, you might soon, especially if you're a vendor to somebody at this point. He might be knocking on your door under the banner of Priva. But for now, go to priva.com, find out what you need to do. Ishan, you're amazing. And follow Ishan, actually on LinkedIn, I guess it's just Priva on LinkedIn too, isn't it?
Yeah.
We'll put the links in the show notes. But my man, thank you for being on. I've enjoyed our conversation, a lot of passion too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it.